Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing today? I thought that we could go ahead and talk about palette pet peeves, specifically reacting to y'all's palette pet peeves because I wasn't even thinking of doing this video, but then I just thought that maybe it would be a fun idea. Basically, I did do a video like this a while back in collaboration with Annette's Makeup Corner, and we both talked about like our biggest palette pet peeves. Honestly, I have to say that still my #1 palette pet peeve is pressed glitters in an eyeshadow palette, but recently I did like a little TikTok about my hatred for pressed glitters, and I asked y'all what your biggest palette pet peeve is, and so many people responded and so many of them were so good. I haven't read all of them, but I did see some of the comments coming in, and I just thought that we could discuss it. I could kind of say whether I agree or disagree with y'all's comments and just do a little bit more of a chill talking video today. So let's jump right on into that. So the first comment we have here says repeat shades. True, but I feel like sometimes this is really dependent on the person, because I'll see a palette and like think that the shades are different enough, but then someone else will see it or like comment on my videos or whatever and they're like, there's too many repeat shades, and I'm just like, there's not even repeat shades. So I feel like that's personal, because sometimes like if there was golds that were too close together, I would be like, ew. But then if there was like maybe like purples or greens, like there's a few different grungy greens, like to someone else that might be repeating shades, but I'm like, I love the variety there. They said putting gold and silver shimmers in a palette that doesn't need gold or silver shimmers. Totally agree. If I could have $1 for every palette that was a blue color story and someone put gold or copper in there, I would go buy a pizza. I would probably go treat myself to a nice meal at the very least. This next one says face products in eyeshadow palettes can go away unless there's a variety of palettes for different skin tones. I definitely agree with this one. I was thinking there are some palettes that I have that have face products in them, and I don't mind them when the face products can still be used as eyeshadow. Like if the bronzer is an okay tone, a lot of highlighters I feel like you can still use for eyeshadow, whether you're throwing them on your lid, on your inner corner, whatever, using them as a topper. But I would agree, overall, not loving palettes that have face products in them. This next one says pressed glitters are an instant no from me. Yes, same. Okay, we've got too many neutrals, especially bone-colored mattes and shades that are almost identical. Again, I feel like too many neutrals, very personal. I can't agree or disagree because it really depends on the color story. But bone-colored mattes, agreed. I feel like it's kind of unnecessary to constantly have that like same like really light matte shade in so many palettes. I feel like brands don't do that as much as they used to, but I can still see why it would be a pet peeve. Next we have another one that says bone colored mattes, but then they also said multiple shades that look similar on the eyes, and I feel like that's a really good point. I feel like it depends on your skin tone on which shades look similar on you, because there's been times where like I'll see swatches or like I'll use a palette myself and I'm like, oh, these shades look similar and these shades look completely different, and then I'll see the same exact palette swatched out on a deep skin tone and so many shades just pulled differently, and I'm like, oh, those look like so different, whereas on me they looked the same, or vice versa. So I feel like that really depends on your skin tone, on what shades to look out for and what shades you need more variation in, but definitely a really good point. I do agree. This next one says giant palettes with little variation in tones. I feel it, because like you could edit it down, but sometimes it depends, because if you just want those tones and you just want a lot of those tones, then sometimes it could be a good thing. It depends. It really depends. I think that's my own, like, I'm thinking my own like personal preferences. If I see a palette that's like full of like red and orange tones and it's like 30 shades, I'm like, that could have been edited down. But then I see a palette and it's like 30 shades of green, I'm like, you're kind of cute. This next one says putting a black in every single palette is also excessive. I feel like this is like the one I see people go back and forth on. Like some people are like, I need a black in every palette. I always need a black to deepen up, which I can understand, because I feel like even if you're just mixing that black with other shades and like having them to have more depth, and like it can make your palette more versatile, but then how many of us only own one eyeshadow palette? Like, I have other blacks that I could dip into and pull into. It's not like a super unique shade or anything. So I feel like I can go back and forth. I'm gonna say neutral on that one. No, I'm gonna agree. We don't need a black in every palette, but I can see why some people like it, okay? Oh, this next one says multiple golds. Even the first one is probably unnecessary. True. When you can't tell the shades apart on the eyes, and when the darkest shade isn't a matte. I hate with a passion when the darkest shade isn't a matte, or when it's a matte with sparkles in it, when it's a really deep satin. I don't know, I need the deepest shade to be a matte, please. I got this comment and it says fading of shimmer shadows just minutes after I put them on, and I have no experience of this at all. I feel like my eyes are not like super dry. They're definitely not oily at all, and I rarely have an issue with how eyeshadows last on me. There's been like, I feel like I could count it on my hands how many times that's happened. So I can't ever think ever of an eyeshadow palette that I like put on and then it started fading right away. So, but if that is you, I'm so sorry that happens. This is a good one. They said makeup with fragrance added. Who is going to sniff their eyelids? I feel like this is another one where I can kind of like see it from both sides, because sometimes with an eyeshadow palette and it's like so cutesy and you're doing like a certain theme, like it's cute, but then for those who have really sensitive skin or sensitive eyes, I can see why that would be really annoying and why it's unnecessary, because it's only the experience of opening up the palette and putting the eyeshadow on. It doesn't have any effect on the eyeshadow throughout the day, other than, like I said, if you're sensitive to it, then it has a negative effect, but it doesn't actually do anything for you. So I can see how that would be annoying. This one says, I need dark, I need light, I need inner corner, I need shimmers that aren't basic or gold silver. And we have those a billion times over, and no glitters. I feel that. Okay, this one says uneven or weird size shape pans, or too much blank space between pans. I feel like this is something that if I am kind of already iffy about a palette and I see that and I'm like, it's not aesthetically pleasing, the way the pans are is kind of weird, like that'll help me talk myself out of a palette even more. But if I really like the color story, then that doesn't matter to me. But most of the time I would agree. I'd say that pretty much all of my palettes are pretty even without like a bunch of extra blank space. The only one I can think of is the Dose of Colors Hidden Treasure palette, and I know people were like they were mad over that one. I agree, the spacing was ridiculous. All right, this next one says cheap clear plastic lids that inevitably crack, break, come off the hinge. So I would say I kind of disagree with this one. I kind of like a clear lid. I mean, obviously it needs to be good quality, but I feel like it helps you see your collection more. Like, I mean, I have this one from ColourPop. It's not like super heavy duty or whatever. I know this is a face palette, not an eyeshadow palette, but I just like being able to see everything right away and just like be very visual. Or like the little, all the Natasha Denona palettes that have the plastic lid. Like, I mean, it's not like something super luxe, but I personally like this. So I'm gonna disagree on that one. They also said when everything looks muddy, but that's probably a me problem. And I would say that sometimes, yes, a color story is done in a way where the shadows aren't flattering and they'll turn muddy. But I really feel like majority of the time when it comes to muddiness, it's just knowing your color theory. You're doing like a green shadow with a purple shadow, it'll get muddy. You have to blend in the most careful way possible. And still, when those two colors meet each other, they're going to turn brown, they're going to turn muddy. So normally what I do with that is like I try, like if I'm gonna do like those opposite colors, I'll do something like on the lower lash line and something on the crease so that they're not touching. Or I'll do like a cut crease and then the crease and make sure again that they're not touching, so they're not blending, so that they don't have the opportunity to get muddy and you still have those colors together. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. This one says a single random cream shadow in a palette is a hard pass for me. I agree, that is kind of weird. And normally it's just like, oh, this is like a primer, but then it's just one shade and it's like, how is that gonna fit everyone? And most people just have their own primers. Like, it's like a nice thought, but like maybe not. This one just says oranges. Which I kind of agree. It's funny because I used to really love like super warm tone, like very orange, red eyes, or eyeshadows, not red eyes. And I like can't even stand that in palettes anymore. Like I just almost never reach for those tones. This is my version of going warm. Like give me a good golden textured shadow, give me some mustardy tones, but I just stay away from traditional oranges too. Who knows, maybe I'll get back into it one day, but I agree. All right, this next one says poor packaging that falls apart or the outside gets gross after one use. Looking at you, ABH, why velvet? I actually really like ABH's packaging. My velvet doesn't look that bad. I mean, it's not the cutest. It's not easy to wipe off, but I don't hate it. I'm trying to think, like, I don't know that I've had that much packaging that's fallen apart. Honestly, mirrors in a palette, like, they can be helpful, but you know how many mirrors I've broken in eyeshadow palettes? I feel, and plus there's also the unnecessary waste of having the mirror in every palette, but I've broken so many, like I have bad luck for the rest of my life. Oh, they said non-eye safe shadows in an eye palette. Why have them then? And I feel like that's like, for me, I agree with the pressed glitters and being not eye safe. I'm like, just have them in their own thing. That way if people who want to use them can use them, but they're not like ruining the color story. But then when it comes to red dyes, I'm like, I'm gonna use these on my eyes all day long. I don't care. This one says, if the palette is bigger than a laptop or over 40 pans. I enjoy variety, but that's just overwhelming. I can totally understand this one, especially because every time I have a palette that's bigger and I like do an eye look, like especially if there's too much shadows that are similar, even if originally I'm like attracted to the palette, like for example, the ColourPop Stone Cold Fox palette, love it. But there's definitely been times when I've dipped into one matte shadow, done one side, and then dipped into a matte shadow, did the other side, and I'm like, wait, I think I didn't dip into the same shadow for my eye looks because there's just so much going on. Okay, this next one says a matte shade with glitter / sparkle in it. If it's in there, it is no longer matte. Agreed. Agreed. Next one says bad payoff. I feel like everyone could agree on that who likes a palette that has no pigment. Then the very last one, this kind of makes me laugh. It says the bigger pans aren't the ones I want bigger. I totally feel that. I feel like it's so frustrating. Like there'll be palettes where the biggest one is like not even a shadow that you like. It's not like I hit pan on eyeshadows that often, but there's definitely been times where I'm like the color that I hate is the bigger one. Like why? Why is this the big one? So those were all the palette pet peeves that you left for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If there is a palette pet peeve that you have that I missed and that I didn't talk about, feel free to comment it down below or just let me know which one is your biggest, even if I did talk about it, because I'd be curious. Like I said, my biggest pet peeve is and probably will always be pressed glitter in a palette. That's the one thing where I'm like, I want this palette. I look at the whole thing, I'm like, everything looks perfect, and then I'm like, wait, is that a pressed glitter? Nope, not getting it. Like I talk myself out of it immediately. So yeah, that's everything. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.